Howdy, everybody. Hope everybody is having a wonderful evening tonight. It is a little chilly here as well. Crazy, crazy weather. I'll tell you what, if you are in the path of all of this snow and all of the wind and the freezing Arctic temperatures, I am really sorry. I think we got down to like 4 or 5 this morning. So we finally got up to like, I don't know, 31 maybe. So I'm hoping that we'll start seeing some of this stuff the snow start to melt. As much as I love it, I just want to be able to get out the driveway. So let's go ahead. We'll get some music going here and see here. How about a little rock? Always fun. So I have such a great guest. Of course, every single guest that I have, I think is wonderful because it's amazing what they have done for not only this country, but for our military and the sacrifices that they have made are exponential, above and beyond anything most of us in the general population will have done, outside of course even probably our police and fire and maybe EMS. I mean, they've seen a lot of stuff that's not fun. So let's go through here, see who we've got. Let's take a peek. So of course Kirk is out there. He is in the comments, but so be sure to give him a big thank you. Jason, thank you. Appreciate you coming on. And thanks for dinner, by the way. It was really great. So Jason made Swiss steak for dinner tonight. Really yummy. Ron Wayne, hello. Welcome, welcome. Jova Q, how are you? Hopefully you're doing well. Jim, nice to see you. All right, Christine, you made it on time. Thank you for that. So we'll let's see, we've got 4 out there in the chats at the moment. We'll give it another couple minutes. So I know I kind of briefly went over, kind of his background and, just to kind of give you all a sneak peek. And we're going to go ahead and we'll let him, in his own words, tell us all about, his own story, what it is, he's done to this point, where he sees himself going in the future, all the good stuff. So without further ado, let's go ahead and we're going to get Kirk Spradley, on with us here. So come on up. Kirk, hey. How are you?
Very good, very good. Thank you for having me.
I'm excellent. I'm happy to have you. It's me definitely who needs to thank you for being on the show. It means a great deal to have your support. Thank you to your wife, by the way, for having her subscribe. Really appreciate it. We are getting so close to that 100 mark, which for me is huge. You will be my 14th veteran that I have interviewed. So and I know I talked about this a couple times about doing a giveaway when we hit the 100 mark, but I'm going to tell you, I made a decision to do 2 separate giveaways. So one for the subscribers in general, but one specifically just for the veterans that have been on the show. So, and I will have something special for that one. But you do have to be on the show, like listening in the chats, or be able to comment. I'm here at a moment's notice when that happens, but I'll post out there before I do the show. I'll make sure everybody knows the date, the time before I do it. So how's your day going?
It's awesome. I'm let's see, what did I do? I finished up a course last night with a buddy of mine, Fingers, Jim D. I think he's watching.
Nice.
Helping me in my civilian career, so that was good. My wife was proud of me and all that.
Well, that's
just been
huge.
hanging out at the house, playing with the dogs, and I guess that's about it for today.
so I know you and I briefly chatted on the phone about a course that you finished up. So I take it that went well.
I think so. Everyone said it did. It felt good. So I guess I'm one more step towards what I believe will be my final career, my last job interview, and my final job. So I'm pretty happy about that.
Excellent. That's great news. I want to shoot a little text message to my kid. He wanted me to remind him um, about the show. So we'll get that done. And then we're going to start, if you're all right with it, kind of
Absolutely.
start with a little bit about your childhood.
Sure.
What was your childhood? What was your family life like?
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll talk about whatever you want. There's some good stuff, some bad stuff there. My father was a aeronautical engineer and an agricultural pilot. He was older. He was 55 when I was born. My mother was a pilot. She worked for the phone company. She was an artist, and she rode motorcycles. So that was kind of my, I guess, introduction. Let's see. My mother unfortunately was killed on her way to work on her motorcycle. She was hit by a hit and run driver.
How old were you?
I was 3 at the time, 3 or 4. My father and I moved down to Pensacola, Florida. That was kind of my first exposure to like the military. Pensacola is a big military town, Navy and Marine. A lot, the Navy and Marine and Coast Guard flight school is down there. They have a big aviation museum and a lot of stuff. My father passed away a few years later. Like I said, he was older, and I think that he had some tough times in his life, and I think that probably pushed him over the edge, if you will. I grew up in a Catholic orphanage. I went to a military high school. I wanted a military career from a young age when I started reading about. The first book I ever read was Guadalcanal Diary, and
oh wow,
really made an impression on me. Read a lot of the World War II books, a lot of the history stuff, the ground.
So you're
war.
a big history buff?
Oh, absolutely, very very big fan of history, big history buff. I read a lot of like the naval engagements in World War II, the European campaign, the air war, the ground battles. It was just very, very fascinating to me. And so I did a lot of reading. And there's Roy Rapatsky. He was in the Kurdish Air Force with me. Roy is, I think he just popped up on your screen.
He did. I just put him out there. Roy, we'll need to have you on, buddy. So make sure you send me an email. We'll get that done.
I would love to. That is really someone you want to talk to. If you think my story is neat, you really need to talk to Roy. He has an amazing story. I'll put you guys in touch with each other.
Yeah, love that. Love that. If he's up for it, I'm all for it.
Absolutely. Let's see. So I went to military school. We had a 2-year junior college, which was also a 2-year commissioning program. I think we were one of 7 colleges in the United States where you could get your commission in the military in 2 years instead of 4 years.
So they had a military 2-year college.
Yeah.
Was it a community college?
I think technically it would be considered a community college. I'm not really sure. It gave you the first 2 years of your 4-year degree. And if you got your commission, they gave you, I think, 2 years to finish your degree so you could go on active duty or something to that effect.
Wow.
So I was
that's pretty neat.
Yeah, it was great. Marion Military Institute
okay.
in Marion, Alabama. I believe they shut down the high school, but the military school is still there, the 2-year college.
That's pretty cool.
But so I was leaning towards going in the Army as an officer. My plan was to join the Army, be a Ranger, get out, go to college, get my commission, and go in the Army as an officer and go into SF. That was really my original career, my career choice, being an Army SF officer. I went to college at University of Alabama for 1 semester, and that was during Desert Shield, when the Iraqis
Okay.
invaded Kuwait. And
I do. I know where exactly I was at when it went across the whole news that this had begun.
yeah, yeah, that's some people. The younger people are like, Desert Storm. Yeah, we've been to Iraq like 3 times. So
Yep.
whatever that means. But I felt like that was kind of college wasn't very challenging to me. I don't mean any disrespect to anyone. It just wasn't really getting me. I felt like I knew more about history than the professors, and I just didn't feel challenged, to be honest with
Right.
you. So I kind of saw that as my chance to, hey, I think this is more for me. And essentially, I enlisted in the Marines, not having never wanted to be in the Marines previously.
So
But
how did you end up going into the Marines then?
I didn't think the Desert Shield, Desert Storm thing was going to last very long. And I looked at the units that I kind of wanted to be in, like Rangers, SEALs, SF, all the different special op units, and all their training is like well over a year and a half of training, and I kind of didn't really want to be in training for that long. I didn't want to miss out on Desert Storm, if you will. I thought it would last longer, but certainly not a year. So it's just kind of a academic decision to join the Marines. I thought I could go in the infantry, and I would be there in a lot sooner than a year. Maybe 6 months or less. So that's kind of why I did that. Like I said, that was where I ended up. I thought that would be the fastest track to go there.
And was it?
Well, it was the fastest track, but Desert Storm was over my first couple of weeks of boot camp. So it's like, well, now what? Yeah.
So how did boot camp go for you? What do you have any fun stories about that?
Oh, sure. I've got plenty of stories.
Let's hear them. Let's hear them.
Yeah.
I always like to hear the stories about, because you walk away and you're like, really, that happened?
Yeah. Hey, man. Yeah. It's. Let's see. I think I was talking to my friend Tano a few weeks ago because he was asking a similar question. On day one, I almost got in a fight with a former French Army guy. He came over and joined the Marines, and he was talking in line. And you at boot camp, you get in trouble for anything, and boy, they really put it to you. And I didn't want to get in trouble, and he just kept running his mouth, man. And finally, I just said, "Look, man, you got to." I'm going to try not to cuss, but
it's open. It's not for kids. You're good.
Okay. Don't want to demonetize you or whatnot.
Oh, no.
Okay. I turned around and said, hey, man, you got to shut the fuck up, man. If I get in trouble, I'm going to beat your ass. And, I was not a big guy. I was about 150 pounds, and he was a big guy. And probably no one had ever said that to him in his life, I think. And he kind of, like, what'd you say? And I was like, do you want me to repeat it? And so, that was day one. And he wound up quitting like 5 days later. So I guess he wasn't as tough as he thought he was. Let's see. One of our drill instructors got dismissed on day 3.
Oh,
yeah. He dislocated a kid's shoulder, and the kid's dad was a drill instructor in one of the other companies. So, big investigation, he gets relieved, and, that was interesting.
I've heard some horror stories, I for sure. Yeah. We mother of Marines because I am the mother of 2. And so we actually, there's a lot of close knit groups that are out there. And so the stories were just amazing that they were saying. It was like, what?
The drill instructors used to say it used to be harder in Mothers of America or because
we made them we made them soft and on and on.
And we want to tell you the stories, but then we don't want your reaction to be, oh my God, I need to change. We're just telling you the stories.
Yes, absolutely.
You're doing the right thing being a mother. We're doing the right thing, being proud of what we did, trying to impress you, I guess. let's see, on day, I don't know, it was like 4 or 5, a lot of marching, a lot of physical training and stuff. But I remember there was a sheet hanging out of like the 3rd floor window, and the drill instructors stopped us in front of made us look at the sheet, and was like, does anybody know what this is? And, none of us know. Well, this kid tried to kill himself. He wanted to get out of Parris Island so bad, he decided he was going to kill himself. But he didn't tie the knot very well around his neck. So what he did is he just fell out of the 3rd floor, and it came loose, and he just fell. And he had a broken leg, and they just kind of let him sit. I don't know how long, I didn't see it. But
I shouldn't laugh. I am a horrible person. Oh,
I mean, it was a crazy place, man. 18-year-old kid. We had a lot of people really kind of wonder if they made the right decision. I think I talked about it before. If anybody saw the other podcast I was on, I was very much inspired by our what they call the guide, our senior recruit. In my platoon, had been in the infantry in the Army for 12 years. He had been a paratrooper, and his career was he was a sergeant first class, I believe, in E7 in the Army, and his career was not going the way he felt it should. I mean, he was really putting out as a paratrooper in the Army, and I can't remember the details, but it got to the point where he said, "Look, you give me what I want, or I'm going to get out. I'll go join the Marines." And everybody's like, "You're an E7 in the Army. You're not going to get out. You're sure as hell not going to join the Marines." Well, he did that. So he shows up as a private,
yeah,
a recruit.
And he had to go all the way through boot camp. Yeah.
And he's a former platoon sergeant, the 82nd Airborne. He jumped. I think he jumped into Grenada, or he had a combat jump. And so I'm looking at this guy, and I'm like, okay, this guy wants to be a Marine. Look at this guy's resume. Maybe this is where I need to be. And then we had another guy. He was a former French Foreign Legion or Legionnaire. He had been a lieutenant in the Army National Guard. He went to Ranger School and Airborne School and everything, but for whatever reason, he couldn't get on active duty, or he couldn't get what he wanted out of the Army. So he's like, "Hey, man, peace out." He joined the French Foreign Legion, and he spent 6 years in the Foreign Legion, what they call the second rep, which is their elite unit. And then he's like, "Well, time to go back to America or whatever." So he's like, I want to check out this Marine stuff. So he joined the Marines. So he had been essentially, Airborne Ranger qualified Army officer, a Foreign Legion commando, and now he's in the Marines.
Yeah.
So again, I'm looking at all these people like, hey, man, they want to be here. This must be some kind of unit,
Right. Killian, actually, that was what Killian did. He was in the Army and decided he was going to do that move, and so he ended up in the Marine Corps. So it's not unheard of. No. It's a lot easier going from the Marine Corps to another branch, sure. but yeah. So here you are now. You graduate from boot camp. I presume you ended up at SOI East. Geiger.
Yeah, Geiger. Went to Geiger, and then here's, I know this is going to freak everybody out when I say this, and no one's ever heard this before ever in their life. My recruiter was not 100% honest with me in the paperwork, and I know that's never ever happened. But when I went to the recruiter, long story short, I said, "Hey, I want to be in the infantry," and I guess I had decent test scores, and he was like, "Oh, you're going in the infantry, but when you get out of infantry school, you're going to go to field radio operator course." Well, there's this thing called a quota, right? And you have to get so many. You got to, 18 years old. What do I know? I'm like, "Oh yeah, well, I don't know. I want to be in the infantry." "Oh, you're going to be in the infantry. You're going to call in airstrikes and medevac. Man, you're going to be the man, bro. Oh, everybody wants to be a radio operator, but you may not. Do you can you make it? I don't know if you." I mean, he knew what to say. You know what I mean? So I'm like, "Oh yeah, I can do it." So I went out to 29 Palms for the field radio operator course. Good course. I learned a lot. Not quite as exciting as what the recruiter said, certainly. And then I went back to a unit. They called it SCAMP at that time, Sensor Control and Management Platoon. Now, technically, it is an infantry billet, but the job was to go out and set up sensors to detect enemy ground movement, and it just wasn't what I was really kind of put on this earth to do.
Right.
But good people, man. They had just got back from Desert Storm and all that, man. And man, again, they're good people, but I wanted something more. Well,
I'll tell you, when our middle child decided that he wanted to join the Marines, Killian, we got him on the phone at the recruiter's office. Well, we had the gunny and the recruiters are all there talking, and making sure that, what they were saying was correct.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, to this day, the best recruiting office ever. Truly, they still check up on him, and they're amazing. So we were really, really fortunate in that regard. But yeah, I hear a lot of those stories that, can they do that? The moms are like, can they do that? That's not what, it's like, oh yeah, they absolutely can do that.
A buddy of mine, Rhett Shoemaker, he was an enlisted Marine, then he got his commission. He retired from the Marines as a major, and his oldest daughter wanted to go in the Marines, right? And he's like, hey, what do you think? And I'm like, hey, man, not my lane, man. But, if it's on you, brother. I think she just wants to impress you, or live up to your standard or whatever, right? So he goes down there with his daughter, and of course he's a major in the Marines, and his daughter's wanting to enlist. And he's, it's just like, hey, there will be no pulling of the wool over the eyes with this group, So I think, Tennessee, where you are, I think there's, they kind of know the drill, in my opinion. And don't get me wrong, man, the recruiting duty, that's you need these people going out, essentially finding our replacement at the end of the day. So it's a noble profession. It gets a bad rap. They do what they can with the constraints that they have. But hey, honestly, nothing but respect for the recruiting professionals. They're given an unwinnable situation, if you will.
Especially in today's society, because numbers are down all across the board for every single branch, and they got to fill like you said, they've got to fill those quotas, and sometimes they're like a really bad car salesman. To get those numbers filled, because once they sign on that dotted line and they stand on those footprints, in the case of a Marine, that's it.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right.
Hence why they have a lot of kids who decide that they just don't want to be there because it's not what they thought it was going to be. And then, you end up with a lot of, threats of this or what have you, because they just want out and they'll do whatever it takes to get out. So yeah, I understand that.
Yeah. I feel like we can change the system. There's got to be a way to change it. Only 15% of the military is involved, has a warfighting military occupational specialty. So I think there's a lot of fluff. I think it's kind of over the years, probably before I came around, it turned into more of a federal jobs program versus people who really, truly want to serve a military organization. I feel like we can make some changes. If I were king for a day, I'd certainly do that. But I don't think people should be drafted. I don't think people should be there against their will. That's just my opinion. You want volunteers. You want people to want to be there. But if no one wants to be there, you need to start looking at the leadership. Why don't people want to be there?
Exactly. So and I think a lot of that has to do with, a lot of the stories that we hear, because, everything gets public, and, and people talk to other people, and when they hear some of those stories, especially about, what happens once you do graduate, boot, if you're still being talked down to like you're back in boot camp and, who wants that? Yes, there is a time and a place to be, on your mark and make sure that, you're following every order, but to sit there and constantly beat a person down verbally just to do it,
Yeah.
there, I don't know. I mean, and granted, it's a whole different world nowadays, and than back in the 70s, 80s, even the 90s, where there was more sense of pride in the military, and same thing with our police officers and stuff. I mean,
Very much so.
so it's if we can get past that and get everything back where it needs to go into some semblance of being proud of who we are as Americans, and serving our country, then I think we'll start seeing that. But unfortunately, I think it takes such a huge event to bring everybody together. And
Yeah.
so it's 6 to 1, half a dozen of the other.
Yeah, I've read a history book or two, and I know you have as well. And I hope it doesn't take the big event, but because here we are, we have a lot of veterans and combat veterans in society now.
Yep.
We just finished our longest war. Not that it's really over, for some of us, for a number of reasons, but I feel like we should make the change before that cataclysmic event.
I
Again,
agree.
I'm nobody, but I did write a book about my experiences, mainly in the military, and a theme that a lot of people who have read, it's in review right now, but the people who have read it have talked about the theme is all the bad leaders that I've come across in my career. And we just got to make major changes with the military. It's just too damn hard to get rid of anybody, and it's almost always bad leaders. They're just, it's just such a problem. Morale problems start at the top. If you see
Agreed.
someone who gets away with something that you can't do, that causes a morale problem, and at some level, you can only push someone so far. If you're spending 9 months on a ship, or if you're spending 9 months in a tent in the middle of the desert, and you're being held to this one standard and the leadership is being held to another, that's just going to cause problems. I don't agree with some of the things that have happened. I don't want to name any specific events, but there have been some real backlash against leaders. Well, I'll name one. I believe in 2003, I believe an individual rolled some hand grenades into the tent where the officers were. I don't agree with that. I think that's a terrible thing. However, at some point you need to kind of step back and say, okay, well, this was a criminal act. This can't go without reprisal, punishment. However, what's going on in this organization where people think they need to kill their commander? That's kind of where I'm coming from. Like, and I hate to use the word voting. I can't think of a better word. There's a better word for it. I just can't think of it. But it's at some level, instead of the commanders promoting their juniors and evaluating them, at some point, the junior people need to say, look, I'm willing to follow this person, this person, or this person. This is who needs to be promoted. I feel like that would be a better system.
That's actually a brilliant idea, because we know in the private sector, they do that at corporations. They will do that in a lot of instances where you actually rate your boss, on communication and, just on and on. And that is not a bad thing. Obviously you want people under you who can take an order,
Sure.
and who can follow those directions, because when and if the time comes and you are with them at war, it can be life or death. And 100%, I understand that. But there is, I guess there's kind of a time or place and for it, when some of the stories, I mean, you've heard them, I've heard them, everybody's heard these stories. And as far as the things that have gone wrong with the leadership. And I know that there's checks and balances, or there's supposed to be checks and balances, but sometimes it can take months, at a minimum months, before anything gets addressed. And so by that time, it's already mentally affected people to the point where they've said, enough, I'm done. I'll do what I have to do to get out.
Yeah.
And I can see, and I can see where, maybe we can try and start, lobbying, find somebody a lobbyist, somebody who can take that and run with it. I know you got to get the right person at the top to listen and pay attention, but you never know.
That was my cat Link. I was going to show you Link. He's the only other male in the house.
Well, I'm the only female in this house. So what kind of cat is it?
I'm afraid I'm not super. I tell you what, if he'll let me pick him up. Yeah, he won't let me pick him up. I don't think.
He's like, what are you doing?
He's orange-ish. I don't know what that means. He's at my feet now. He wants to keep warm, so he's at my feet. I'm surprised my dogs haven't been down here. I have a lab and 2 Afghans, and they cannot be without me. So I'm kind of surprised they're not down here, like all in my face. But
aren't they fun? I love animals. I mean,
I love them.
Not a huge cat person, but I have owned a cat or 2 in my life, but more of a dog person. And oh my gosh, they're great. Maybe, Jason said maybe a tabby that you had, maybe.
They kill the mice, and that keeps the snakes away. So cats are good to have around. Yes.
Especially if you're in a rural area.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So cats are good to have around.
So, all right. So
mine would certainly say she's definitely a cat person.
Really?
Yeah, she loves cats. So, doesn't really like dogs, but it's all good.
It takes a little bit of everything to make the world go round, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. We had one crazy cat. My mom had barn cats. And so when I had moved to the house near her, and of course it's like, 1 mile, 2 miles away, and like the closest house is at minimum 1/4 of a mile away outside of that. So she gave me one of the kittens. And oh my gosh, this cat stayed outside, in the garage or what have you, running around, and it would come back with like half an ear gone or an eye missing or
boys fight. Boy cats definitely fight.
Yeah, crazy. It was, oh, wow. So, all right. So where were we? We've got, so you're sitting over there at SOI at East, you're in holding at Geiger. And how long were you in holding? Do you recall?
Well, I wasn't in holding at Geiger. We went pretty much straight through in those days. I went to Geiger, and then I went to 29 Palms. I was in holding at 29 Palms for maybe 2 weeks before the course started, and the field radio operator course. And then I went and checked into my unit, the 4th Scamp, I think was the name of it.
4th Scamp.
Yeah, it was a reserve unit down in Mobile, Alabama. So I was down there, and like I said, it was good people. I wanted something more, and so and then I saw these guys, and they were wearing jumpsuits, and they were carrying parachutes and machine guns and all this kind of stuff and scuba gear, and they had boats. And I was like, hey, man, who are those guys? And everybody, oh, don't go over there. Those are recon guys, man. You don't want to be over there, man. You might, they might eat you or something. I'm like, well, how do I become one of those guys? Oh, you'll never be one of those guys. Oh, you're going to make it into recon. It's like, okay, well, somebody has to make it,
Right.
So I talked to my commander, long story short, I had to wait 6 months to kind of, pay my dues or whatever in my unit. But I went over there. You have an NDOC, and then you have reconnaissance and indoctrination platoon RIP, and then you go to the schoolhouse, amphibious reconnaissance school, and you pass all, and that's a few months. Everything's a few months, and then you pass all that, and then they start sending you to all the schools that you need to get qualified to be a really, to really be a recon Marine. And it's a lot of training, man. And again, initially I was like kind of wanting to skip, all the training, and here I am, where the training never stops.
Yeah. So, how long were you with the Marines then?
I was in for 4 years. I got out. I came back in. That was what they call active reserves. I got out, kept trying to get into law enforcement. Couldn't get a job. So I went back into the reserves for 3 years, and then, nothing was really going on. We went to Panama for some training with the Latin American special operations guys, and then some counter drug type stuff. And this is before September 11th. And so I got out after that. I just, it was like, it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. It really, it's just a big commitment, and I didn't see why, that we didn't have a war going on. We didn't go to Somalia. We trained for Somalia. We didn't go. We trained for Bosnia. We didn't go. I just kind of almost, I didn't really see the point, and I was pursuing a law enforcement career. So, I just, got out.
Okay. So what was the next step then?
Yeah.
Because your jacket is like long.
Yeah. Hey, man. I get bored easily, I guess. So trying to get into law enforcement, it's a waiting game. And my ultimate goal was to get on with the U.S. State Department as a diplomatic. I found out about the diplomatic security service through some guys I'd been in the Marines with. And you had to finish your degree and have 4 years of law enforcement. So that was kind of what I was doing. Well, as I'm trying to get a law enforcement job, you got to pay the bills, So I was a bouncer for 8 years. I worked in nightclubs for 8 years. That was the only job that I could find, really, that, the only job that wanted me. There was really no other jobs out there. Like I said, I was pretty sure that having my background, I would be a shoe-in for like a large metropolitan police department, a SWAT team. These were things I wanted to do, and nobody would hire me. One of the, I won't say where, but a major metropolitan department that I applied to, I don't want to say it the wrong way. I did exceptionally well in every part of the selection, whatever you want to call it. And they hired me, man. They gave me a letter of, I forget what they, like, hey, man.
Acceptance.
Acceptance, and I'm like, that's awesome, man. Right. So I go home, and I get a letter a week later that's like, they've rescinded the offer, call your investigator. And I'm like, what the hell, man? So I call the guy, and I'm like, hey, dude, what's going on? He goes, hey, man, you're what we're looking for, but you're not what they're looking for, And long story short, the psychiatrist thought I had a risk-taking personality because I had speeding tickets. And I had a combination of speeding tickets, and I said that I would shoot a machine gun and I would jump out of an airplane if someone offered me that opportunity. And I thought, man, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard, because this was a very dangerous city. Like, people thought I was nuts for wanting to be a cop there anyway. And I was like, it sounds exciting, man. And what if I get on the SWAT team? They had helicopters and all this stuff, man. It just seemed like this is, where I should be. And my cat's, he's, I don't know if he'll let me pick him up, but he's running by like, whew. But so when this guy told me that, man, I was like, man, what are you guys looking for, man? I mean, people are getting killed over there every night, man. And he said, look, man, just relax, bro. This happens. He goes, give it 6 months. Come back over here. Find me. I'm going to walk you through the process. You're going to do what I tell you. You're going to get a job. Now, that's probably, in retrospect, I probably dodged the bullet. But what I probably should have done was just do what he said. But my pride, I was like, man, the hell with that. And so, for the next 8 years, I broke up fights and checked IDs and cleaned toilets and, do the stuff that bouncers do, man, and it, like I said, I wasn't proud of it or whatever, I don't want to say it was below me. I felt like I could do something more with my life, but that was the only opportunity that was there. And I can assure you, I was looking everywhere.
And this is prior to 2001. And I do remember it, at that point, it's like they had more people looking for a job than they had jobs available as a whole. I mean, just in general, across the whole US even. So yeah, I remember that general time and how difficult it was for people looking for something. Yeah.
No, you're exactly right. September 11th obviously changed all that. I would not wish that on anyone, certainly. Having said that, my small circle of friends, mostly veterans, my circle of friends was like, hey man, this is peace is an anomaly. It's not a everyday thing. This is an anomaly. You're going to need people like us one day. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, at 8:15 in the morning on a cold September morning in 2001, millions of people or billions of people found out why people like us are around,
Yeah, 100%. And at that point, that's when, again, you saw the world, everybody coming together as one united, group and for a common goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was, you said it exactly right. I wish we could have the unity and all that without such a traumatic event.
Yep.
I think our founding fathers are much smarter than anyone gives them credit for. They came up with the idea of more or less, not 13 colonies, but today we have 50 states. And I feel like you should be able to kind of find your flavor, maybe different strokes for different folks type of thing, I don't think we all have to, have, I think where I'm going with it, and I may not be articulating it correctly, but hey, man, if you want high taxes and you want, whatever, man, hey, live in this particular area and maybe that's for you, man. My wife and I want to kind of be away from everybody and not have anybody bothering us. And we're not hurting anybody, so I'm a little confused that I can't, I'm in Georgia, but it's, you just wonder how long it can last. We might be looking at Tennessee, but you got problems everywhere, but
the thing too, though, is everybody's moving to places like Montana and Tennessee, and a lot of Californians and a lot of New Yorkers. I mean, they're just coming here by the truckfuls. And unfortunately, then we see, of course, property values going through the roof because they're selling their places where they were paying, $10,000 on a 1,500 square foot home in taxes a year. And, their house is worth, according to their, $1 million for a 1,500 square foot house on a 3,200 square foot lot. And now they're moving here and they've got all this cash and they're thinking, boy, that's a steal.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and I get it, man. That's what the market will bear for those guys. Man, the issue is, and I'm in the Atlanta area, we started picking up New Yorkers somewhere around 1996 with the Olympics. Everyone saw kind of the plus side of New York down here without the negative side.
Right.
But they come down here, thinking, oh, here's this, new place. And they're not thinking, well, you kind of ruined your home with your decision-making process. Maybe not bring that down. Maybe this is a good place because of the way we've been doing things. Perhaps, give it, just think about it, give it a shot. Your particular mentality, you're turning into a locust. You know what I mean? You're going around just everything.
I do. Oh, I understand completely.
Maybe your technique is not the best technique. Just take it. I'm not calling you a bad person. Just take a deep breath and look at, your policies in your city. Perhaps you created that mess. Well, don't come down here and create that mess down here, man. We're cool with, what we're doing, man. We like what we got going on, man. So, just something to think about.
For sure. So how long, you said 6 years you were a bouncer.
8 years.
8 years you were a bouncer. Okay. Gosh, that's a long time to get. So then from that point, what led you into your next direction?
Yeah, I saw I saw a situation whether we'll just call it the GWAT, I guess, the Global War on Terror. I saw my opportunity to kind of bring my skill set to the table. I didn't know exactly where I would land, how that would work out or shake out. I applied to the Atlanta Police Department. They were starting to get more. They were starting to get more of an anti-terror, like they had special, like the SWAT team and stuff. They were doing more with some of the federal agencies and stuff like. So I thought like my background could come into effect. So I applied to the Atlanta Police Department. I applied to the Air National Guard. They had a what's called a JTAC unit, a Joint Terminal Attack Controller. These are guys that coordinate the airstrikes and stuff like that, which sounded like a really awesome job. So I applied to the Atlanta Police, the Air National Guard, and a company that no one had ever heard of at the time called Blackwater. And Blackwater gave me a call within 24 hours, and they're just like, hey, man, looked at your resume, really interested in talking to you. When do you think you could start training? And I was like, hey, I don't know, man, send me a ticket. And they're like, okay, check your email or whatever, man. They sent me an e-ticket or whatever. And I was on the next thing smoking. And
wow.
That was 2004. The insurgency had not quite become what everyone knew as the insurgency. There were still a lot of things going on, certainly in 2004 in Iraq mostly, but also in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Horn of Africa, Pacific, the Pacific Islands like Philippines. There was a big push, to get into the counterinsurgency in a number of ways. Kind of alleviate some of the military's, how should I say it? Some of the non-combat functions could be done faster and cheap. When you start moving a federal agency, man, it's just this massive, bureaucracy, this big ball, and it takes so much to get that energy going. And that's not how terrorism and counterterrorism work. You have to have these smaller organizations that you can move around on the chessboard, if you will. And that's what a lot of the contracting stuff was. It gets a bad rap, for whatever reason. I don't think people understand it. If you don't like the contract stuff, that's fine. What's your solution? Because it was significantly more efficient than the federal government. So I think what you're saying, if you don't like the contract stuff, is you need to cut out the fat in some of the, like I said, only 15% of the military is involved in a combat job. So that should alarm taxpayers, if nothing else, man. I know on the military side, I'm not happy about that, but taxpayers in general should be like, hey, man, where's my money going? That's just my opinion.
All the equipment, all high tech. Higher tech.
Well, I mean, I'm okay with high tech equipment. I have yet to see it. We had when we loaded when I went to flight school years later. When we were loading our crypto into the aircraft so that we had secure communications. I forgot the name of the piece of equipment, but it was essentially a Palm Pilot from the 80s. And this thing was probably $10,000.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and it's just it's difficult for me to describe it without showing it to you, and obviously I don't have this equipment because it's classified, but it was like a Palm Pilot. So I'll be happy.
I had a Palm Pilot.
Yeah, you know what I mean. I mean, great back in the 90s or whatever, but I have yet to see this great equipment, man. I mean, show me where it is, because I've flown Apaches, I've flown Blackhawks. I've been around guys that have flown F-22s, and we talk about what these things have and what they don't. You'd be embarrassed. You would not like the answer that people will give you when you start talking about technology. It's not really there. And it's a deeper conversation. Like I said, I don't know what your timeline is, but I can buy
I'm here as long as you want to talk.
Well, I can buy a $10,000 GPS and put it in a Cessna, and I can do what's called RNAV, or GPS approaches in bad weather. Very few aircraft in the military have that capability. The Air Force One doesn't. I don't think has that capability. So you're using it's in the 21st century. You're using ground-based navigation when everyone else is using a combination of space-based and ground-based. Like I said, it's called RNAV. But just little things like that, these. And as far as I can tell, they come from the factory with the capability, but the military says, oh, we're going to save $10,000 here and not put that software update in there. Okay, well, now you've increased the leg of the flight. And let's just say it's an F-15 at $30,000 a flight hour, and it doesn't have the RNAV capability, and it has to go from ground-based navigation source, and it's added, like I said, 30 minutes to the flight. Well, that's $15,000. Don't you think saving $10,000 but paying $15,000 to save the $10,000? That's not good math, man. I'm not a PhD or anything, but that doesn't add up.
Well, so, math is not my friend, and I agree 100%. So.
I mean, come on,
wow.
man.
Well, it's not surprising to me. In all fairness, it really is not a surprise to me that occurs. They've got a budget, and if that budget needs to be met every year, otherwise that budget shrinks, and then they're in trouble.
Yeah. I mean, you're exactly right, and no one's held accountable for it. You know what I mean? And it's just so frustrating, man.
Jason says, "Step over $1 to pick up a dime."
There you go. There you go. That's exactly. Couldn't have said it any better. So.
Yeah, 100%. So, okay. So before you started flying helicopters, you are part of this. Well, you get called for Blackwater.
Yep.
And you're with Blackwater how long?
I was there for a year. It was a U.S. State Department contract, and essentially, most of my adult life, I was trying to get onto the Diplomatic Security Service, and now here I was in the Diplomatic Security Service as a contractor. But I was doing what I'd always wanted to do, and I did like it. And we'll talk about whatever you want. I went to a place called Ramadi in 2005, and I had several near-death experiences there. I saw a lot of people get killed. Just an incredibly dangerous place. I felt like I should take the next step. I still wanted to serve, but I felt like the high-profile stuff was, like I said, I lost a lot of friends there and in other places, and I felt like there was something else. A buddy of mine, he was a recon Marine. He told me about a thing called the special programs, and that's what we'll call it without getting too detailed. It was a paramilitary organization within the intelligence community, and you had to be, you kind of had to know somebody there, and you had to kind of be invited. And I was, and I put it in, and then you had to go through their selection, and there were a lot of things on the front end, like background checks and psychological interviews and all this type of stuff. And we had people that didn't pass that, for whatever reason. And there were just a lot of little steps, and eventually you get to the selection process, and people didn't make selection, it was a very challenging time with regard to the training and just all. It was very challenging. The people who ran it were former what called Tier 1 guys. We called it Dev Group and CAG, but you would call it SEAL Team 6 and Delta Force.
Okay.
But that's not what people call them. And I don't know if you knew that or not. That's not what
I did not.
Yeah, like I said, we call it Dev Group and CAG, but most people know it as SEAL Team 6 and Delta Force.
Right.
But they ran the selection program. I see your question there, Travis Haley. He was a Force Recon Marine. I don't know him personally, but he served in Blackwater in 2004 during the Battle of Najaf. Travis Haley, and he was friends. He's a friend of friends of mine. I don't know him personally, but I do see the question there from. I don't know Travis personally, but I went through the selection. Got selected. Like I said, is very challenging. I'm not comparing our selection to what the Delta and the Dev Group guys go through, but they set it up. They're like, look, we want people that can do this, and this is how we're going to evaluate it. And we went through that selection process. And like I said, I was one of the guys who got selected, and I went to the special programs.
Nice. Okay. So, I met you through Jason.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you meet Jason?
Jason, the Force Reconnaissance community is very small, very small. And Jason was in Ramadi right before I was. And we knew a lot of the same people. And, he's got as many stories as I do with just how many near-death experiences we both had in Ramadi. It was a crazy place. It was a crazy.
And do you know Lee Deckelman as well?
I do. Yeah, I do.
Great guys. Both of them really stellar people.
And these are the top of the food chain type people. Make no mistake. It's like there just aren't really that many of us out there, I guess. And it's fortunate that I know them both. But yeah, Ramadi was a very dangerous place, and Jason was there. And he wrote about it. He's on his second book now, but he wrote about his time in Ramadi. It was a terrible place to be in, but it was a great place to be in. I learned so much about myself and about life and about war and people. I would never not want that experience, but it was a very tough time. I found an individual who we had just got hit with a rocket, and it was during a dust storm, and he was a young Marine, and his teammates came into our compound saying, "Hey, we're missing someone. By the way, one of those Marines I ran into in the National Guard years later, almost 15 years later."
Wow.
Yeah, small world over in South Carolina. But so I was like, yeah, man, we'll go find him. And I went outside. And I found him. He was kind of laying against a palm tree, and he had been out jogging at night because you try to you're in the Marines or any combat unit, you got to stay in shape. It's so hot during the day. He waited until nighttime, so he was just out jogging, and a fragment went through his what do you call it, chest or whatever, and it pierced. It was this tiny little fragment, and it pierced his heart. And he bled to death, man.
Man.
Yeah, when I found him, he looked like he was conscious. And I was just like, hey, man, hang in there. We're going to get you. And he wasn't really responsive. And then we had a Special Forces medic, former SEAL team guy, but he went to the Army Special Forces medic course, 18 Delta. So our 18 Delta gets over there and he starts assessing him. And I'm like, hey, man, what can I do? He goes, run back to the car, get the med bag. Ran back to the car because I was a driver, so I had the keys, pulled out the med bag. I ran over there, and by the time I got back, man, he bled to death. And it was just a crazy place, man. But it was war. And,
Right. And there's really no rules. I mean,
yeah.
But it's tough. So, we'll get to this question I have floating through my head here in a little bit. I don't want to take away from where you're going. So
no, not at all. So that's Jason from. We served together. We didn't serve together in Ramadi, but we kind of high-fived within about a week. And I knew him by reputation, and I think he knew me by reputation later on. But yeah, Jason's absolute, just an amazing person. Not just an operator, but he's an amazing person.
Yeah, he was watching him, like watching you, and just very animated. And I've read some excerpts from his book. I'm waiting, Jason, if you're paying attention, I am waiting for those books. I cannot wait. So we're looking, hopefully we'll have a couple of books to raffle. Oh, well, not raffle, but to give away. So some signed copies. Yeah, so that's the hope.
I've got a signed copy, by the way, of his book. So,
Do you? Awesome. He said he just had gotten some in, so he was going to send me one or two. So pretty excited about that. I'll just have to stay on him.
That's right.
Because, we get busy and we forget, especially the older we get.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I'm 51 and I forget everything.
Oh, you're still a youngin' then.
Well, feel my age.
Well, you've done a lot, and in those young 51 years. So you're, after a year, you came back stateside?
Yeah, the selection process was all stateside. All the interviews and all that stuff was stateside.
Okay.
When I finished the selection, I went to Afghanistan for my first time. I went to Kandahar, operated in a very, very small team. And this is late 05 and early 06. So bin Laden was still on the loose. If you were in Afghanistan on this program, your mission was basically to find bin Laden. If you were in Iraq on this program, your mission was to find Zarqawi. And we were all collectively successful in both. Played a small part in both. Very nice. Proud of what I got to do for many years. Like I said, I'm very, very proud of it. Very, very proud of what I did.
Yeah. Well, and just in general, I mean, we've been searching for so many years for both. And so I can imagine, to finally put an end to that and say, okay, we've completed this finally.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
I played a very small part. There's a lot of people out there that played a much bigger part than I did. But I was very proud of the part that I did get to play. I've got a brick from bin Laden's house. He used to live in a place called Tarnak Farms. And when he lived there, it's outside of Kandahar. When he lived there, there was a strike against him. I want to say I don't remember what ship. It was one of the warships, one of U.S. Navy warships. It might have been a submarine. I think it was a cruiser. But they said, hey, we're going to get this guy named bin Laden. And this is like 1998, I think, time frame. And they fired a missile, but the time of flight was like 4 hours or something. So by the time the missile hit, he was gone. But I went out there, years later. I went to Tarnak Farms and I got a brick from bin Laden's house. So that's one of my little mementos.
That's cool. You never know. Could have had his hand on it.
Hey man, and I went to a lot of his caves and one of his rooms and say in Kandahar. He lived on there's a guy named Mullah Omar, and he lived with Mullah Omar, and we not me, but a unit before me took Mullah Omar's compound. So we lived on Mullah Omar's old compound. I kind of lived where bin Laden lived for many years. So that was interesting.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. So, okay, so you're back from Ramadi, and then what?
So, I come back from Ramadi. I go to the special programs. I go to Afghanistan, and for about the next 10 years, I bounced back and forth from Iraq to Afghanistan on the special programs. Um, I met a warrant officer in Afghanistan who encouraged me to go to the warrant officer program in the Army as a pilot. So I went home and I applied. They said I was too old. And I was like, well, I heard there's a waiver, and they're like, well, you're too damn old.
Wow.
I was in my mid-30s or whatever. I missed it by 2 weeks, by the way.
Oh,
But they told me about the National Guard. I went to the National Guard, and they said, yeah, well, we can send you to flight school. So I joined the National Guard, and they sent me to flight school in 2009. Went down to Fort Rucker. And the funny part about that is the Army said I was too old, and they were concerned about me making it. I was number 3 in my class, and the only reason I wasn't number 1 is because the 2 guys ahead of me beat me on the run by like 4 seconds and 8 seconds or something. It wasn't like this huge disparity. You know what I mean? And I'm 39 years old, graduating from flight school, and these kids are like
oh my God.
26, 27, whatever. And it's like, yeah, I can see why you don't think I would have made it. I get it. Can't serve in the Army. I'm in the Guard, but the Guard
Do you
actually,
think they would have put you through some tests, some physical tests, that you would normally have for anything, even, like a PT test?
well, in aviation, it's you either pass the PT test or you don't. It's not it's not weighted. In flight school, it is because it's competitive. You're
Right.
trying to be number 1 in the flight in your class, but it was just pass or fail for each. Man, there's again, if I were king for a day, I'd make some changes, but at the end of the day, they said because of my age, I could not go on active duty, but I could go there in the National Guard. And when I completed flight school, if the National Guard would release me, I could go on active duty. So it's kind of bizarre how the rules work or whatever, but it is
That
what
is.
it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you learned to fly
Yep.
helicopters.
That's right. Yep.
And then,
I
okay.
graduated. I got qualified in every model of the Black Hawk and the OH-58 Alpha Charlie, which was I guess an advanced trainer. So it took 20 months from start to finish. All the training that's involved in flight school, from the Warrant Officer Candidate School, SEER School, all these classes that you have to take, the leadership courses, and then once you get to the flying, all that stuff. So it was a 20-month process, but I got qualified in every model of the Black Hawk and the OH-58 Alpha Charlie. So
Wow.
I left Fort Rucker, and I don't think this has happened since Vietnam, but I went straight from Fort Rucker to mobilization to Iraq. So
Really?
I was deployed as a dust-off pilot. Kind of a funny story. The Army doesn't do anything fast. It's certainly in the conventional Army. And I'd spent my entire career in the special operations community. I was used to having a lot more autonomy. So I get to Kuwait. I did a month of training in Mississippi after flight school that had nothing to do with flying. And I was like, hey, man,
Hmm.
is there some way around this? And they're like, no, you got to learn about Humvees, and you got to learn about how to wear your PT belt and get a haircut every Monday and all this type of Army stuff. And I'm like, all right, I can see why we haven't won a war since 1945, to be honest with you. So I was like, whatever, man. I did 30 days in Mississippi, and then I get to Kuwait, and I check in, and I'm like, hey, man, I'm ready to go to Iraq. I just got out of flight school. The war's going to be over, man. I don't want to miss it. They're like, well, you got to go through training over here. And I'm like, okay, dude, what kind of training do I need to do in Kuwait? I just did 30 days of training in Mississippi. And it was, the guy named all the stuff that I was supposed to do. And it was all the stuff I did in Mississippi that, again, had the military spent, I don't know how many millions of dollars to train me how to fly these advanced aircraft. And I'm over here in these Humvees and nothing against it. I mean, I'm a ground guy in my heart, but again, I'm just like, hey man, what is the purpose of this? And they're all pissed off, like, hey, you got to be a soldier, you got to learn all this stuff. I'm like, dude, I've been doing this since 1991. I'm pretty sure I could teach you a thing or two. But a buddy of mine who had gone through the workup or whatever they call it, the training, he goes, look, man, there's no record of what you're doing in Kuwait. You can skip all that stuff and just tell them you did it. So I go up to this, he's like a sergeant major or whatever. I was like, hey, sergeant major, hey, man, when I'm finished with all the training, where do I go? He goes, oh, you just go over there to the ADAG. It's like an Air Force passenger terminal type thing. He goes, you just go over there to the ADAG, show them your ID, and, tell them where you need to go. I was like, okay, thanks, man. I'll hit them up in a month. I went directly over there with my with my duffel bag, all my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I whipped out my ID, and I was like, hey, I'm Chief Warrant Officer Spradley. I need to be on the next thing smoking going to Iraq. And they're like, where do you want to go? I said, I need to go to Talil. They're like, man, we don't have anything going to Talil for a couple of days, but we got a plane going to Basra. I said, I'll take it. So I figured at this point in my career, I knew enough people in Iraq. I could probably run into somebody I knew, and I did. So I got to Basra, and man, Rocket City, man, Basra. Oh my God, Basra used to get jacked up. But so there's like, I don't know anybody there when I get there, and I got like 4 duffel bags. I'm walking down the like a mile down the road to where the barracks are or whatever, and I'm just looking for people that I might know, and I run into these DynCorps guys, and actually ran into some guard guys from my unit. But I'm like, hey man,
wow,
just got off the plane. You guys got a bed? Can I borrow a bed or what? And they're like, where are you supposed to be? What do your orders say? And I'm like, hey, dude, can I sleep somewhere? Can you find me a bed? So the DynCorps guys hooked me up and, gave me a bed. I stayed there. I checked in on my email the next day. I was like, hey man, I'm down in Basra. I'm here for a couple of days till I can get to Talil. And the guys in Talil were like freaking out, man. Oh my God, this was my introduction to Army aviation. I had been in the special operations community where you're a grown up, and I came to aviation where you're a child. You know what I mean? I mean, it was just like, they couldn't believe that I did this. They were like, oh my God, you're insane. You are crazy. I'm like, no, this is stupid. Why
did you get reprimanded for that?
Say again?
Did you get reprimanded for that?
Kind of, sort of. They were like, they think you've been kidnapped in Kuwait. They just saw you were gone one day. I was like, no, man, I'm fine. I just don't want to sit around in Kuwait driving around in Humvees and just playing, filling sandbags and shit. I'm a Black Hawk pilot. There's a war going on. I mean, this is where I'm supposed to be. And they were just like, okay, man. Oh my God, oh my God, someone who can think for themselves. We've never dealt with this before. You need 5 different people to sign pieces of paper. So I was like,
and it's triplicate.
Yeah. So ran into some buddies of mine from the Guard, and they hooked me up with wound up being the Virginia Army National Guard. They had some Blackhawks, and they were going up to Talil. And they're like, hey man, bring your stuff over to the airport. We'll take you up to Talil. And I was like, okay, cool, man. Like, no risk assessment, no, getting 15 different people to sign pieces of paper and this and that. They were just like, hey, man, meet us at the airport. We'll give you a ride. I mean, it's just that simple. Imagine that, shocking as that is. And I'm not trying to get anybody in Virginia in trouble. God forbid these grown men.
A long time ago.
Yeah. But it's just like, okay, look, man, you're telling me I can fly this $22 million helicopter, but I need to, do it just doesn't make any sense. But so anyway, they take me up to Talil. And then from Talil, I started, I went to Al-Qut outside of Nasiriyah, which was a big battle for the Marines. And so what you're saying is the smartest soldiers, yes.
Are actually Marines.
I cannot argue with your logic. So I get to Al-Qut. I start my training, because even though you're qualified in the aircraft, you're not qualified to fly missions. You have to go through additional training, and it's a lot more advanced, and the tolerances are a lot lower, obviously. But I became what they call readiness level 1, and I was able to fly combat missions as a dust-off pilot. I spent the next 7 months flying medevac missions, We supported the Army Special Forces. It's called an ODA, Operational Detachment Alpha. Supported them almost exclusively in Nasiriyah. They were really doing some awesome stuff. It was an honor to be, supporting these guys. I picked up an individual who had been shot in the head. He was shot in the helmet, and the helmet slowed the bullet down, but he was shot in the head. He was kind of the first real deal combat casualty I picked up. Flew him to when I went to pick him, when we flew to pick him up, it's called a POI, point of injury. And en route to the POI, these Apaches show up. And now this is 2011, so it's kind of later in the war. These Apaches show up, and these two F-16s show up. And they were kind of looking for trouble, and they heard the medevac call. And so, man, I'm just trying to concentrate on getting there, on time and do the landing and all this stuff. And here it's like, dust off. This is Warmonger, flight of 2 H-64s. We're able to support. And you're like, oh, okay, I don't know what that means. There's like, dust off. This is, Viper, 17 and 18, flight of 2 F-16s. We're at 10,000. We're going to come down for a show of force. You clear us hot, and I'm just like, hey, man, I don't know what any of that means, man. I'm just trying to fly the helicopter. But these guys just kind of came out of nowhere. So it was really cool to see all this effort because I didn't know if I'd like dust off or not. I kind of wanted something with weapons. But I'm showing up, and I just see all these people coming out of the woodwork to support this mission that I'm doing. And they were just so proud to be involved in a medevac. And so I started taking pride in my job. I was like, yeah, this is very important, man. That, what I do is important, that this person is evacuated. And it's so important that the Apaches quit what they were doing. The F-16s quit what they were doing, and they all come over to support me, and it's so, again, I thought I wanted something with guns on it, like a gunship or something, but then I'm flying dust off and I see everyone supporting me. And I'm like, man, this is awesome. And I like this, so we got that individual to a higher level of care, and he survived, which is good, and not everyone survives, unfortunately.
Right.
I flew the last mission of the war, 2011, believe it or not, the war in Iraq didn't end, but they said it was over. I flew the last mission. I saw the last, it wasn't a Humvee. I forgot what it was. It was an armored vehicle. It crossed over the border into Kuwait. And I was like, well, I guess the war's over. Deployment was over, went home. Went back to the special programs, part-time. I found a stateside job, and I got on with a stateside program and started flying more in the Guard. And then my first marriage was not an ideal situation without getting into too much detail. But I met my current wife and wound up getting divorced of, my first marriage. And this woman's my soulmate. It was meant to be, for sure. Unfortunately, I got another deployment. So we had just gotten married. And, here I am going out the door again as a dust off, this time, not just like a dust off pilot, some, jackass, just sitting there like, hey, what should I do, boss? That type of thing. Now I'm a flight lead. I'm an air mission commander. I'm a pilot in command. One of the scariest things that ever happened was we were training down in Camp Blanding, Florida, with the Florida National Guard. And the Florida Guard, they have a lot of former naval aviators down there because there's a Navy helicopter squadron in Jacksonville, and their obligation is 10 years, but they don't always, stay in for 10 years. They get out and look at other opportunities, and the National Guard will take these guys, pluck these guys out of the Navy. Like, yeah, man, come over to the Guard. So here's this former naval aviator, and he's given a brief, and he's like, you guys are about to go out the door, first time in war, you got to find that person you need to look up to and what's the word I'm looking for? Imitate, or there's another word for it. Anyway, you need to look to that person, and you need to look up to this person and pick their brain and find out what they know. And I'm sitting there listening to this guy's speech, like, yeah, man, that's great. can't wait to meet this guy. This sounds great. He stopped talking. He looks over, and everyone in the room is now looking at me. And I'm like, is my zipper unzipped? Like, why the hell is everybody looking at me? He's like, Kirk, do you have anything to say about that? And I was like, man, he's talking about me. And it's like,
that's what you think. Yeah, I'm still looking for that guy.
Yeah, who is this guy? And it's me. So I'm the smartest, MFer in the room all of a sudden, and I surely did not feel it, but just felt like a lot of there's another word for it. A lot of responsibility, pressure as we're going into this next deployment, and we went back to Iraq and Syria, and like I said, I'll tell you whatever you want to know about it. But I got to do a lot of missions that were very emotionally taxing. I was proud of a lot of the things I did. I was the flight lead for the first cross-border medevac mission into Syria. Picked up a couple of wounded, Delta Force guys, flew them back. Let's see, I was the air mission commander for the first flight into Mosul, daytime mission to pick up a Marine raider who had been shot in the head. And that's a story in and of itself. It's in my book, and it was published as a separate story. But they had everything going against them. And I don't want to say, I want to be careful how I say that. They had everything going against them, and we had everything going against us, including my commander who was incompetent. He couldn't get his helicopter started. He wanted me to wait, and I told him to go,
Yeah.
You can imagine what I said to him. And I closed the door and had the guy I was flying with, Garrick, he started the engines. And he's like, "What'd the captain say?" I was like, "I don't know. Who gives a shit? I don't know this guy." Yeah. But my buddy Dominic, he was out there. He's a captain at Delta Airlines now, by the way. Dominic.
Oh, wow.
Dominic was out there, former combat medic, and he's a pilot in command for an air assault Black Hawk. And I needed 2 Black Hawks to go to Mosul. I needed 2 Black Hawks, and I needed a gunship escort, which that's what it says on paper. I require a gunship escort. Now, it doesn't say 2 Apaches, and they never go by themselves. But as I interpret the rules, it said gunship escort. So Dom was like, "Hey, man, you need a wingman." I said, "Yeah." So he cranked up, and he was with me. I'm waiting on the Apaches to check in. And a guy, a buddy of mine, his name's Steve, who wound up being my instructor when I switched over to the Apache some years later. He's like, "Hey, Kirk, one of our guys is broke hard." The Apache is a very complex aircraft. It's not meant to crank up fast and go in a straight line, but that's another story. It's a gunship. It's an attack helicopter, but it's not a quick reaction force helicopter.
Right.
Broke. But I started thinking, I was like, look, it just says gunship escort. It doesn't say 2 Apaches. And I said, "Hey, Steve, look, if you come with me now, I'm the air mission commander. We've met all the requirements that, you're a gunship, you're an escort, but you may want to tell your battalion commander just in case." Well, this other voice comes over the radio, and he's like, "Hey, Kirk, that's a great idea. That's what we're going to do. By the way, I'm the battalion commander." So his battalion commander was in the helicopter with him. And so we went out there. We picked up this Marine, like I said, had been shot in the head. He survived. Definitely due to the corpsmen and the medics who were with him that day. Those Marine raiders saved his life. They were surrounded. They had an Air Force JTAC with them who I don't know all the details, but I know he was very much responsible for some danger close stuff that kept them from getting overrun. We got there. My friend Natsuki Hama, the flight medic, and our flight nurse, and the crew chief, man, they really don't get the credit they deserve, but everyone collectively saved this individual's life, and he was able to go home to his family. A side note to that is Dom got in trouble for not being, filling out whatever paperwork he was supposed to. God forbid we save someone's life on the battlefield. You didn't follow the rules there, buddy. And of course, Steve got in trouble. A lot of people got in trouble. No one said, "Hey, man, what a great job you guys did, man. You guys had everything going against you, and you wind up getting there to the battlefield and pulling this individual out of the, out of the gunfight." Good on you. No, nobody said that because nobody gives a shit about that. They only care about their careers.
Yeah.
It's just sad. But like I said, it's kind of a separate story. But I don't know if you can see it. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yep.
If you look up there, that is a letter from the mother of the Marine. Communication was very difficult in that location for a number of reasons, and she didn't know what happened to her son. Someone just said, "Hey, look, your son has been shot. We'll get back to you." A shitty thing to do for a mother. I don't need to tell you this. You're a mother of Marines, so just imagine what this woman was going through.
Out of her mind. 100% out
yeah,
of her mind.
yeah.
Yeah.
So social media. Like I said, the Force Recon community is very small. And he was a Marine Raider, which kind of Force Recon, kind of created the Raiders. Long story, but so people in the community were like, "Hey, man, I know a guy that's a dust-off pilot. He used to be a Force Recon guy. Let me see what he." It's like, "Hey, Kirk, man, you know anything about that?" I said, "Yeah, man, I flew that guy today." They're like, "You flew him?" I said, "Yeah, man, I'm here in Erbil." And long story short, I reached out to the mother. I said, "Look, I can't give anything classified or anything like that, but your son was evacuated. I helped evacuate him. He's in surgery. He's okay. I'm going to have the medic and the nurse talk to you and give you more information if they feel comfortable with it. But I just want you to know that he's okay." And she just thought that was the greatest thing.
Yeah.
She wrote me a letter. She made some Christmas decorations for me and my wife of our dogs. And I sent her the 9-line. It's called a 9-line medevac request or a 9-line. I sent her the 9-line that I received, the notes I took on my kneeboard, things I thought would be important to her and him, because he's going to tell that story one day to his kids. And so I thought it was important that they have that. And I didn't think it was a big deal, but they did. They thought it was a big deal. And like I said, she made these decorations and sent me that letter. So I'm very, very proud of being able to accomplish that. Obviously no one in the U.S. military is going to give us medals or tell us we did a good job. God forbid, because it doesn't help them get promoted. That's how they are.
Yep.
But that's worth more than a Distinguished Flying Cross or a Air Medal or anything like that. Like I said, I'm very proud of it. It's prominently displayed on my wall because I'm so proud of that day.
Well, and I'm sure as a mother, just to hear from somebody who cares enough about not only their son, right, but also knowing that mother is going through such emotional turmoil from the unknown. And for you to be able to provide information to help her be able to get through what she needs to get through mentally to be able to help her son when the time comes for him to be stateside. I mean, that's huge. And that's something that I've no doubt you will forever be in her debt for.
Well, I appreciate that. I just felt like that's something you should do. I don't.
In my mind, it's the right thing to do.
So,
but I know, they've got their whole, setup of, the going through the chain and, et cetera, et cetera. But I say thank you to you for that, just as a mother and knowing how I would feel.
Well, and I appreciate it, but just like as a reminder, I mean, it was a team effort. I mean, so many people came together that day to make that day happen. The mother gave me credit because I talked to her, but I wanted her to know how many people were involved, and I wrote a story about it, and it was published. I was just very passionate about, hey, you need to look at what all these other people did. And that was kind of the impetus for the book. I guess that was the first part of the book. I wrote that story that was published. And then a few years later, I was like, it's probably just time to write about some of these experiences that I think about.
And so what was it published under or in?
It was published. I put it on Facebook, and then Jason Morrison published it on his website.
Okay.
And then he shared it on LinkedIn. And it's
Okay.
called A War Story. And it was edited by my friend Jim Danow, who was in training with me last night, who signed me off in my training, and also got my friend Dom, the other pilot, got him a job at Delta Airlines. Jim is a retired naval aviator, and he retired from Delta Airlines, and he's an instructor there on the Airbus. So solid individual, and just trying to take care of veterans.
Which is awesome. I tell you, we really need to take care of our veterans, and we need to be there to hear them. We need to be there for whatever you guys need. That's my personal thought, my personal opinion. I think everybody who's been out here on the chats, or listening to the shows, all of you up to this point, that we all believe in our veterans and we all love you dearly and appreciate everything that you have done in sacrificing your time with your families and missing all the holidays and all of the you know with kids and so on and so forth, and really not getting the credit that you guys deserve and the thanks that you really deserve, because there's so many people that refuse to do it. And I mean, and thankfully they have that choice at this stage, right? So, but we appreciate everything that you've done. um uh,
I appreciate that, but like I said, you don't serve alone. It's really the
Correct.
families that suffer because the families aren't getting parades. No one says thank you for your service to the wife or the kids and stuff. So I think like the families deal with it more, have more on their plate. I don't think they get the credit they deserve. Um, as far as people not wanting to serve, we got to adopt this mentality of they should want to serve. If they don't
Right.
want to serve, it's our fault. Okay,
Right.
who is in charge of this? The DoD or the each individual branch? You can't sit there and mandate people. I mean, it's like mandatory fun. There's no such thing. You can't sit there and make people serve in the military. You have to have. You want people to want it, and if they don't want it, you need to ask why. And it's probably your fault if you're in charge, and you need to change.
Yeah.
So, that's just my opinion.
So, okay, so now you've gone back to the Guard. You had a couple of special uh, missions, if you will. Um, and are you still in the Guard?
I'm in the Guard. On this deployment, I'm in the Guard, and I've completed my obligation. I can get out or I can stay in. That was just one story, one of many stories I have of pure and total incompetence of our leadership. I was embarrassed to be in the U.S. military, to be honest with you, man. I thought all the generals and the colonels and the captains were a bunch of cowards. I could not stand these people, man. I was embarrassed to wear the uniform. When I came home from Fort Hood, I didn't wear my uniform on the plane. I was embarrassed. I saw a lot going on in Iraq and in Kurdistan, and I didn't see any effort from our leadership, but I saw effort on the part of the Kurdish people. And I was like, okay, these people want to fight. These people want
Right.
to do something.
They have
So
that drive.
they have that drive, and you're looking around at, not necessarily my peers at the tactical level, but a lot of the leaders, and they had everything on their mind but winning the war and fighting and any type of mission. So I went to a buddy of mine and I said, hey, man, I want to join the Peshmerga, which is the Kurdish paramilitary. It's their elite military unit. And so I talked to a guy from the Minister of Interior's office. He was like, man, I love your background. Love to have you in the Peshmerga. I was like, okay, well, what position can I come in as with my experience? Will I have a team? Will I have a platoon? Will I be like a company commander? What would I do? And he goes, oh, you're going to be in charge of our training. You're going to be in charge of our, special operations academy or
Wow.
whatever. And I was like, okay, that sounds great, man. But how many men will I have to go into Mosul? What equipment will I have? Will I have radios? Will I have, what will I be given to go, prosecute these operations against the enemy? He's like, I don't think you understand. We don't let Westerners fight. And they had some high profile Westerners get killed fighting ISIS and fighting terrorists. A lot of guys had joined the Peshmerga. A lot of Americans, a lot of Europeans. There was an actor from Pirates of the Caribbean who joined the Peshmerga, and he was killed in Mosul. And
really?
It was international news, and the Kurds kind of considered that, in the Western world, you kind of realize you're going to have battlefield casualties, and that's, you want to minimize it. Could you do something better? But it is the price of doing business.
Right.
In Kurdish society, because he was not a Kurd and he was killed fighting for the Kurds, they took it as a personal insult that they could not protect this man. That's how their culture looked at it. So they stopped letting Westerners go to the front. And I was like, look, man, I didn't come here to freaking train people. I want to go to the front. And they're like, aren't you a helicopter pilot? I said, yeah. They said, well, why don't you fly our helicopters? It was like, we're going to create an Air Force. We're going to have a referendum for independence. They wanted to be their own country because they were technically part of Iraq, even though they were a different culture. And I was like, you're offering me a spot on the ground floor to create an Air Force, and I'm going to be in it? He goes, yeah, would you like that? I was like, holy shit.
That's huge.
Yeah. So I was like, whose ass do I have to kiss, man? So I called my wife and I was like, hey, you're not going to believe this. And please, if you say no, I get it. I just got an offer to join the Kurdish Air Force. And they're going to fly you over here, And she's like, oh my God, that's crazy. Hell yeah. She's an adventurous person. And she, honestly, man, like I said, she's my soulmate. She wanted me to be happy. And she's just a great person. But she was excited too, man. She had been following all the stuff in Mosul and all that. So I go home. I get 30 days of leave. I get all my stuff together. I pack a bag. I get on an airline, and I fly back to Iraq on an airline.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So like I said, I joined the Kurdish Air Force. I'm down there with my buddy Roy, who typed in.
Yeah, who you're going to hook me up with.
Yes, you have not heard stories until you've heard Roy's stories. I will give you one quick story, and I'll let him tell it. His call sign is Buffy because he killed a vampire. I'll let him tell you the story. You're not
okay. All right. I'm making a note of that so I can ask about that.
Yeah, ask him how he got his call sign. So I'm there with Buffy, and I'd always wanted to fly Little Birds, the MD-530. He flew Little Birds for the Houston Police Department and Blackwater and all this stuff. And he's like, you want to fly Little Birds? I'm like, hell yeah, man. I've always wanted to fly. He's like, okay, man, let's take one out, see how you do. I'm like, really? He's like, oh, yeah, man. So we get out there, man, and I think most people are probably looking at, Black Hawks, Apaches, these sophisticated aircraft with, the Black Hawk had two engines and an APU and hydraulics and all this stuff. Little Bird had nothing. It was like a 400 horsepower turbine engine, no hydraulics. I mean, it was just, I was about as close to a motorcycle through the
kind of like a crop duster.
Yeah. It was. Let's see if I got. Here's a picture of my wife in the Little Bird right there.
Oh yeah.
So that's a Little Bird or MD-530. That's me. That's me on the president's detail, the Kurdish president's detail, which is
that's cool.
So yeah, long story, but like I said, I don't know how much time you got or cut me off.
I'll tell you, I am so excited for this book to get out. You have no idea. So okay, keep going. So now you're flying helicopters for the Kurdish Air Force, if you will.
I'm flying for the Kurdish
Air Force. You're creating the Air Force.
Yeah. So what they wanted was they wanted Westerners, primarily Americans, as advisors, and Kurdish society. These are great people. Unfortunately, it's still the Middle East, so there's a little bit of an exaggeration, when people are talking. So you talk to guys like, hey man, tomorrow we're going to do some formation flying. We're going to do some, 9-line close air support. We're going to do some reconnaissance. We'll get into the multi-ship. Have you ever done that before? Oh, yes, yes, yes. I have 4,000 flight hours. I'm very good with that. I flew for the Iraqi Air Force, and it's like, how long did you fly for the Iraqi? Oh, I was there for 6 years. Okay, 6 years, and you got 4,000. Yeah, the math doesn't add up, but you got to be respectful of the culture. You know, in America, you just be like, you're lying, you know, but over there, it's
Right.
like, okay, of course, of course. But, you know, can we, you know, so you got to be real diplomatic in the Middle East. You can't.
You
Uh,
can't just call him a liar.
there you go. There you go. Yeah. So,
See
you know,
that
man,
going south really
yeah,
quickly.
yeah. It's, you know, because you're guest, you know, I mean,
Right?
you're in their military, but you're a guest, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, man, you get out there and for like the first 5 days, man, everything's going really well. And you got there's a lot of training to do, but day
Hmm.
6, it's like, oh, you know, my sister is sick. My son has to go to the dentist. My, you know, whatever. There are all these excuses and nobody shows up for work. And you're like, okay, I guess it's up to me and Roy to fly the missions and do this stuff. And that's kind of what happens, you know. Like I said, Kurdistan is 10 times better than anywhere else in the Middle East as far as like, you know, self-discipline and mission focus and all that. But yeah, they wanted Americans because we had the technical knowledge. We could get them up to speed. And then we would fly VVIPs in a VVIP aircraft, or we would provide armed escort for the president in his helicopter. And they wanted Americans to do that because they're still very tribal, and because they're tribal, if someone from one tribe, like let's say the president is from one tribe, and we're going to a location that's very predominantly another tribe, there's the
Okay.
possibility of sabotage and things like that, coups, assassinations, and stuff like that. So they knew that Americans, I don't know if I want to say loyalty or mercenary, but they knew we would simply just do our job without getting into the politics of the region. But Roy and I used to joke that we had to pre-flight the aircraft twice, once for mechanical and one for booby traps, man, or sabotage. So
Ah, I
it
can
was
only imagine.
it was interesting, man. I spent 3 years in the Kurdish Air Force. They flew my wife over. You know, we lived in a 5-star hotel. Had a great time. It was really awesome.
And did she think it was a great time and really
Oh
awesome?
yeah. Well, she told me she did. She said I got to, you know, and how many people got to fly their wife around Iraq? You know what I mean?
Oh, wow.
Took her out in the helicopter. I showed her the mountains. Erbil is, there's a place called the Citadel inside the center of the city. I want to say it's 6,000 years old. It's the oldest continuously lived in city in the world. I took her to the
Oh,
Citadel.
wow.
I flew her up to the Zagros Mountains and showed her the border of Iran. I showed her Turkey. I showed her where they found the first Neanderthals. Um,
That's cool.
I showed her where the battle of, I can't remember the name of the battle. It's where Alexander defeated the Persians. I want to say Gamjamal. I can't pronounce it,
I
but I
don't
showed
know.
her a lot of these historical places. The last church that Mary went to, Jesus's mother was there on the airfield. We couldn't get into the church, but I showed her from, you know, on the outside of the fence. You know, this is where Mary. This was her the last time she went to the last church she went to was here in Erbil. So we had a good time. You know, it was a really good time. The referendum kind of failed. Everyone in Kurdistan wanted to be their own country, but they had a lot of enemies. The Kurds are great people. They're pro-American, and that makes them the enemy of everyone in the Middle East.
Right.
So my wife had just left. She had just gone home, and the Iraqis invaded, the Iranians invaded, the Turks. Everybody invaded, you know, and I was stuck there for 4 months, man. And I'm sure that
Mm.
was very stressful for my wife, you know, not knowing.
How
You know,
was the communication?
I still had the internet, you know, and you know, I could call her and stuff like that, and a lot of things. She started kind of losing her faith in the competence of the American government and the U.S. military because the Iraqis invaded America's strongest ally in the region and did nothing. The Americans did nothing. And so it was just a real shame. It wasn't the first time America sold out the Kurds, and it won't be the last. And I'm embarrassed about that. But I was there for 3 years. Like I said, had a great time, great experiences. Roy and I had a blast. We did a lot of stuff, which I'm sure he'll talk about when he gets on your show. But had a great time. Really, really did. But over and it's a long story, but essentially, ISIS had a small cell that got into the city and took some hostages. And Roy and I could have provided their tier 1 unit. We could have took the little birds in and flew them in and dropped them off on the roof, and they could have done an assault and rescued the hostages and killed the bad guys. But the Kurdish generals were fighting because the media showed up, and the Kurdish generals are fighting each other on who should take credit for the raid and who owns the helicopters and who owns the SWAT team and who owns the vehicle. So it was this big mess, man. It was like, so I was like, the Americans have been here too long. If these guys are, because this is what American generals do. This is what American, leaders do. They fight over who's in charge versus go make the mission happen. So not long after that, Roy and I just kind of decided, hey man, we've had a good run. It's time to go find something else. And we got on a plane, came home, and never went back.
And what did you do next?
So I became an EMS helicopter pilot in the Atlanta area. And about a year later, I got back in the Guard and started flying Apaches.
I'm telling you, I did this little video this afternoon, and I'm like reading off, all of these accomplishments, and I'm thinking people out there have just got to be thinking that I am just full of it.
Yeah, no, man. No, I mean,
it's a lot. It's
sure.
A lot, and to right, yes.
Yeah.
So I think it's amazing what you have accomplished in your life and what you have done, for this country as well as other countries. That's huge. And you've really continued though to grow and learn new things, I think, which is amazing. It's not just been, I'm going to stay here and this is what I'm going to do. And if you'd stayed in the Marine Corps, where would you be today?
Yeah.
You think about that. And so you've really grown a lot in my, what I can envision based off of the stories that you've told.
Well, thank you.
So now you are going into, so you did that for how many years for the EMS?
Yeah, I flew EMS helicopters for 3 years. I want to bring up I hate to do this, but last night, I worked for Air Evac. They're a GMR company, great company. Last night we lost a helicopter in Oklahoma, and I flew that helicopter, and I knew those people. I was on what they called a strike team, which I would go around and set up EMS bases, and I would fly at bases that were short of pilots. And there's a pilot shortage all over, so there's plenty of work for me. But I flew in Texas, Oklahoma, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky. I've flown all over, but I did fly at this base in Weatherford, Oklahoma, and they had a fatal crash last night that killed all 3 crew members. It's a dangerous business. I was very, very, very proud to do it. I did it for 3 years. Probably the most challenging flying I've ever done because it's single pilot in a single engine helicopter. You don't know where you're going. You don't know what you're going to find when you get there. You're not landing at an airport, man. You're landing in the middle of nowhere. Are there wires? Are there people with guns? I mean, you just don't know. So it was very challenging. I was very proud to do it. But as I got older, and again, I had several close calls, I decided I needed to switch over to fix, airplanes. And that's what I did. But I would like, people to just kind of keep the families in their thoughts. This helicopter went down, and we don't know what caused the crash at this time.
Well, I'm very sorry. I will definitely keep them in my thoughts, and I'm sure everybody paying attention today, and even up for the recording, they'll definitely be in everybody's thoughts. Hopefully they can figure out the cause and what happened and transpired. Did you know the pilot and crew?
They haven't released the names, but I've flown out of that base, so that the chances of me
Odds are pretty good.
are pretty good. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah. Well,
it's
I'm really sorry to hear that. And that's never easy for sure, you
absolutely.
know.
Yeah.
So, okay, well then after 3 years of that,
Yeah.
and now what path are you on?
Yep. So, and flew the Apache for 3 years in the Guard. Kept trying to get a full-time job. It never worked out. We were supposed to deploy to Afghanistan, which I really wanted to do. I wanted to deploy as an Apache pilot, and that may or may not sound like the right thing, but it's what I wanted to do. The deployment got canceled for obvious reasons, and not to know if your viewers are religious or whatever, but God wants you on a particular path, whether you want to be on that path or not. And so, even though that was what I wanted to do so bad, it just kind of didn't happen. And I found myself at a fork in the road at 51 years old. My family has suffered for me being gone. I've had a lot of
Mhm.
close calls in helicopters, and I was offered a job to fly business jets. So I switched over to business jets. I took a non-flying position in the Georgia Guard. So I'm a brigade um tactical operations officer, non-flying in the Guard, and I've been flying business jets. And after my training last night, that's more or less one of the last steps I need to take before I can apply to a major airline. So that's going to be in my future.
Well, I'll tell you, I am thinking such good thoughts for you that you can find a job that you enjoy and are happy to stick with, one that's going to take you in a lot of different places that you and your family will be able to join together and go. And
Absolutely.
because that is tremendously exciting. I know my niece recently became a stewardess
Oh, yeah.
for Delta,
Oh,
and
nice.
now
Very
she has
nice.
just been like all over the place. In fact,
Yeah.
um, because yeah, she was in Atlanta. She graduated from the training there in Atlanta,
Yep.
and she had wanted me to go. So we drove out there, and I went to her graduation for
Nice.
that. So yeah, and but I mean, boy, she has been like everywhere,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
I
yeah.
think her latest trip was Paris.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay. Yeah.
I know.
That's awesome. And,
Yeah. So
and that's a great company, and that's where I want to be. I don't make any secret about it. I live in Atlanta. I want to be at Delta.
hmm
But they have, man, they just some amazing opportunities for people. Not just flying, not just the flight attendants. They have
Yep.
maintenance, they have operational control center, they have secure, they have so much, and they have I want to say it's a 12%. I forget what it's called, but they really take care of their employees from a financial standpoint. They just have a really good reputation, and like I said, I
Yeah.
hope that's in my future.
Well, again, yeah, definitely be thinking good thoughts for you, and hopefully you'll be able to know soon on how that goes. Because to know what path you're on is huge,
Yeah.
and it's kind of tough sometimes when you're in limbo and you
Oh,
don't really
absolutely. Yeah.
you don't know
Well,
what
yeah,
you're doing.
absolutely. I know it'll happen eventually. Like I said, I want it to be Delta. If it's someone else, that's like I said, God has a plan. I feel like it's going to work out for me. I still have the job flying business jets, which is it's certainly not a bad job. There's no cockpit safety door or whatever. So like when people bring dogs, the
Yeah.
dogs come up there and I pet the dogs. I play with the dogs while I'm flying. It's okay. So I have a good time, man. It's nothing to sneeze at or whatever.
Uh, I'm not going to ask you this question only because
Go ahead, send it.
the fact that you're still doing the job. So I'm not going to ask you that question that I had on my head. So
No,
or
go ahead.
in my head. All right. So have you ever had a passenger in the commercial side of things, commercial business, that was just like really rude and really treated you like just a servant?
And let me say that I was prepared in case that ever happened. Um, and I haven't been there for like 10 years or anything like that. But honestly, everyone has been very nice and respectful. I've had people tip me money. Um, and I don't think I do anything necessarily special. I realize that a lot of these people are, if they're a business person and they're really on a schedule, I try to keep everything very brief and get them out on time. If it's like, people with their pets, people I love my dogs and cats. I'm sure they do. So I try to have like treats for the dogs, and I try to tell them about, hey, if your dog has some type of inner ear issue, get them to chew something, as we're descending, because that's when the pressure builds up. Yeah, I just try to be nice to them. But, knock on wood, so far, man, everybody's been
Oh, there you are.
very nice. But certainly had people show up late and things like that put you behind. But
Right.
I haven't had anyone be rude to me or anything.
That's great. That's huge,
Yeah,
because that really would ruin the whole
yeah,
experience, I think.
yeah, absolutely.
So, okay. So let's ask you this. Where did you get the call sign Tadpole?
Yeah, absolutely. I got it in Iraq when I was working for Blackwater. My friend James Flynn. Um, like I said, I try to put a smattering of kind of everything in the book. I
Mhm.
want it to be a realistic story without it, because and no offense to anybody that's done this, but sometimes you see people have written books and it's all, me, or I did this, I threw hand grenades, I saved the world, and that's not really reality. So I try to throw some reality there in the book, and one of the things about the lifestyle is, you're going to have friends get killed, you're going to have friends get injured, you're going to have, hopefully not you, but it could happen, or certainly one of your friends, alcoholism, drug use, divorce, all these types of things. Um, James Flynn, very good friend of mine, he unfortunately was one of, unfortunately, many teammates who succumbed to his demons and took his life. But in '04, when we were working together, he was a SEAL team guy, and he was very, very proud to be a SEAL team guy. How do you know there's a SEAL in the room? They'll tell you. No, I'm just kidding. A lot of friends that are SEALs. But James, his call sign was 7, and we had a guy on the team named Stumpy, who was an ex cop, and he was very good with his verbal judo, and he's basically playing. He was setting up James for failure, because James is always just like, I went to Buds, I went to Buds, but that type of thing. Hey, you want to go get a burger? I went to Buds, Navy SEAL. Okay, man, all right, man, just well, whatever. But so anyway, the scuba portion of Buds is 8 weeks long, right? Well,
Okay.
I went to the Navy dive school, which was 7 weeks. I went to the Army dive school, which is 4 weeks, and I went to pre-scuba, which is 2 weeks. So technically, I had 13 weeks of training, and James had 8. Now, I would never bring that up because it doesn't matter to me, but it meant a lot to James, to 7, and Stumpy knew it. He just wore it on his sleeve, Buds. I went to Buds, Navy SEAL, blah blah. So Stumpy one day in the chow hall, he's like, hey James, or hey 7, how long's Buds? Oh, it's 6 months. It's 6 months. Says, oh wow, man, that's tough, huh? Wow. Well, you guys do scuba training at oh yeah, it's 8 weeks. 8 weeks, it's hell, and okay, all right, cool, man. Hey Kirk, didn't you go to like 2 scuba schools or something? How much scuba training do you have? And I was like, well, and I told him, I said 13. And Stumpy's playing it up, man. He's just being all dramatic, like, oh my God, Kirk, because I didn't have a call sign. He's like, Kirk has 13 weeks of scuba training. You only have 8 weeks? That doesn't sound right. You're not very good. Man, he just lost his mind. He stood up, he threw his food, he goes storming out of the chow hall, and he stopped and he turned around and he points at me. He's like, you're not a frog man, but you're a tadpole. And he walks off. So that's how I got my call sign.
That's great. Oh my gosh, that's a great story. I love it. Isn't it funny how I mean, they all these you find one specific thing, right? It's like Jason Morrison with, Elvis,
Elvis.
and
Man, good
yeah,
looking guy. Hey, man, good on you, man. He had the hair, the whole thing, man.
he still has that hair.
Yeah. Hell yeah. I have
I mean,
none.
his sideburns aren't quite as low, I'm sure, but
Oh, yeah.
he's still got some sideburns. Um, Yeah, that's amazing. That is so fun. So, for anybody watching, I have put uh, Kirk's website out there, kgspradleyauthor.com. And let's see, I'm going to try something, see if this is going to work.
And it's the same on all the social media platforms: Facebook, X, Instagram. You can find me, KG Spradley Author. Please like and subscribe, comment, whatever you want. And as soon as the book's ready, awesome. Thank you. That looks awesome. Look at
So
that website. Man, that's professional.
I am telling you what, that is awesome.
Man.
So this is the book, War Junkie. And this has not been published as of yet. Is that correct?
That's correct. I'm waiting on a couple of different government agencies to release it, say I didn't give out classified information.
Which is wonderful. I'm sure they appreciate that. And so, so you guys can go out there, take a look. Again, it is kgspradleyauthor.com.
That's right.
Excuse me. Keep talking.
Now, and like I said, that was a potential cover. The other covers is actually a little more somber. It's War Junkie, a cautionary tale. Like I said, I wanted it to be an overall, and that's just some of the podcasts I was on, and that's the actual cover of the book. Like I said, War Junkie, a cautionary tale, because there's a downside to that lifestyle that not people don't always talk about the downside. If you really have a hankering to be a special operator or a combat aviator, I wish you success, and we certainly need those people. Just understand it comes with a cost, and a lot of times the family pays the price.
Right. Yeah. Very, very true. So, one of the questions that I ask each guest is, when it's kind of a little different in your situation because you're still part of the National Guard.
Yeah.
So, but when you got out of the major stuff, right? Did they give you any kind of like any kind of counseling, any kind of resources to help you, get through what you had seen, what you'd been through on that level?
No, I'm going to say, just generally speaking, no. There are a lot of things that the military does. The military is not prepared for war. Number one, and tell me if I'm not answering your question or if I go down a rabbit hole.
Oh, you're fine.
The military is prepared to exist and spend money and promote certain people, and that's what it's. A war is a huge inconvenience for the military. If you're outside the military, that's very confusing. But if you're inside the military, it makes perfect sense. You're told about all these things that are important to the commanders or the first sergeant or whoever. They have nothing to do with winning war or fighting war, for that matter. It's just the most random, weird things that make no sense, and that's why people usually don't stay in the military very long if they're mission focused. That they can simply go out into civilian life and be successful in civilian life. Again, we need major change. Hey, if I ever win the lottery, or the next president sees your podcast and says, "Hey, that needs to be a Secretary of Defense," hey, I'll fix all this stuff.
Right.
But, you know what I mean? But so no, there was none of that. And I don't mind talking about this. I just I got to a point emotionally where I couldn't keep everything in. My technique was writing the book, going on these podcasts. Thank you. You don't even know what you're doing for me right now by being on your show, but it's a big deal. But I couldn't keep all this in. I did go to the VA. The VA is filled with people who are caring and kind and want to help. The VA is unfortunately a government organization, and so most times the people who really want to help you are hamstrung by very strange
Right.
regulations and rules and things like that. So the VA is not, they are not bad people. I want everyone to understand. The people at the VA that work there, man, I've never had a problem with those people, man. Maybe once, and it was just a one-off thing. The guy was probably having a bad day, but they are extremely caring and compassionate people. They all want to help, and I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but let's just say potentially one person may have, or maybe a few people have bent the rules to do what's right versus what the rule says. And I'm not saying that was me that experienced. I'm just saying perhaps it happened to a friend of mine. Wink, wink, nod, nod. But the VA is filled with very caring and good people who want to help you, and they try. It's the system that's, this big pyramid. If you could get rid of that kind of that top portion and just let these people do what they're capable of doing, you wouldn't have a lot of problems that you're seeing today.
Yeah, and and that's tough. Are you involved in any other with any other nonprofits, any of those? Anything like that?
I donate money to the Marine Recon Foundation, the Marine Raider Foundation, and
Okay.
I'm involved with uh, pilots. Is pilots for paw or pilots and paws? I don't have an airplane. I had a small plane, and guys in the pilots and paws would transport dogs for people.
Oh, that is neat.
Yeah. So what I put, and the book hadn't been published, but the last chapter of the book, the last thing says that 100% of the proceeds from the book will go to veterans charities and veterans
Eh,
organizations. I make good money. I don't need a job. I try to, like I said, I'm just trying to get the story out there, not necessarily my story, unless you think that, hey, here's a guy who can, um, I don't want to say move on, but find purpose outside of something that was such a big
Right.
part of our life for many years. Um,
Right.
it's the hard one of the hardest things you'll ever do in your life is it, you know look yourself in the mirror and come to the conclusion that you used to live on Mount Olympus, and now you're not on Mount Olympus anymore. You don't live on Mount Olympus. You rent an apartment, and the landlord is going to come and kick you out for somebody younger. I mean, it's just how it goes. But I will always treasure my time in combat aviation and special operations, all the special programs in the Marine, everything I've done. I will always treasure those memories and those people that I served with. Um, but the fact is, I'm 51 years old, and I'm pursuing a commercial pilot career. It's not a bad job by any means,
Right.
but it's not carrying a machine gun. It's not jumping out of an airplane. It's not looking for terrorists. It's not flying a gunship. It's not flying medevac. It's none of that. And that's okay because I'm at a different point in my life. But it's
Yeah.
very, very difficult for veterans in particular because we were so damn good at this particular thing for so many years because we had to be. And if you weren't good, you could get killed or get other people killed. It's very difficult to transition. And I just want people to know you can transition. You don't have to make a lot of money. You don't have to do this or that. You can simply, you can have a dog. I mean, dogs are
That's
fun.
right.
It gives you purpose. You can be a mentor to someone. You can go. I grew up in an orphanage. You can go. They call them group homes now, but you can go down to a group home on weekends, play basketball with kids that don't have parents. I mean, there's so many things you can do outside of what we did in the military. And I'm just trying to get that kind of that word out there. If the book does it, great. If it helps me do it, great. Um, but that's just kind of my purpose now, I guess you'd say.
And that's huge and such great advice for people for other veterans that when they transition and they just don't know what to do themselves. And there are a lot, and that's part of what this is about. This channel specifically is to find different resources outside of the VA, because that's an obvious one, right?
Oh yeah.
But find some. that are a little unique, something that, most wouldn't think about, and give them options and find those different resources across the states. And, so you talked about the Marine Recon Foundation. There's also the Brothers in Arms Foundation. And that was one that Jason Morrison talked about. Of course, there's just so many. And if you like getting out and doing some overlanding, Mind Overland, they do things on the East Coast. If you haven't heard about them, I did a show about them. There's several founders, different shows. They are all veterans. They do 6 trips a year. And then and that's just for veterans. So it's like a $50 deposit, and then they pay for your food and your gas. This last trip, if they haven't had it already, I can't remember what the schedule is. It's like a 500-mile trip. And so, it gets you out of the house. It gets you moving. It gets you with like-minded people, like situations, and gives you an opportunity to talk with other people without civilians, if you will, being there where you feel like you have to watch what you say.
Yeah, sure.
And then on Veterans Day, they open it up to all families of veterans, supporters of veterans, etc. And that's going to be in North Carolina. So if you're, like I said, if you get up there, you camp, beautiful area up there. So, if there's anybody out there interested, check them out. So we're just really happy to be able to help and provide those different resources. So this is huge. And everybody check out when this is out. I'm going to make sure, of course, that Kirk gives me the date when it's available, so that I can do a short out there, put it out there for everybody, so you can go out and get a copy. Really, really super excited to read this. And again, really excited to get like Jason's as well. I have read Lee's book, but still got to get Jason's book, and really excited for this one. I know Killian really wants to get a copy as well. I'm sure there's several others that are out there. So I know that even though this is your story, and the same holds true for Lee and for Jason, it's everybody's individual stories. It resonates so much with people, just in general, because maybe people out here aren't veterans necessarily, but the fact that we have our own wars internally, right? And it's how we handle them, and how we're able to relate, if you will, so it makes a lot of sense. And writing it down and getting it out is just amazing for therapy, I think. Of course, I am not a therapist, but
here comes Sonny. I told you my dogs would come down here. Come here,
Sonny. Oh, nice.
Come here, honey. Come here. Come here. I'm gonna hold her up.
She's like, "What are you doing with me?"
We gave her a bath. She was not smelling the greatest earlier, so my wife and I gave her a bath.
Oh, she's like, "Oh, look at her, yellow lab."
Yeah, yellow lab.
Beautiful.
Yellow lab and 2 Afghan hounds and 2 cats.
Awesome. That's great. And they keep you busy, right?
Yeah, they do.
And that's amazing. What else was I going to ask you? I don't recall. But yeah, so make sure, of course, when that hits gets published and it's out there, that you let me know. Now, you did say when we were messaging back and forth that you actually have some others that are in the works. Can you tell a little bit about those?
I sure do. My second book, they'll all be novels. My second book, I'm 3/4 of the way finished, and it could theoretically be published before the first one. I don't think that's good timing, but it's essentially It's a three main characters. One is an older airline pilot who flew in combat, flew Apaches. The other character is a police officer who was an infantry sergeant in combat, and the third character is a flight nurse, and she was a flight medic in combat. And they all come together one night when there's a car wreck. They all collectively try to help get this person out of a car, and they are each individually reminded of their own combat experience in this one particular battle. And they never figure it out, but the audience or the reader finds out that they were all together in that same battle, and here they are. And they never figured out. They never know that they knew each other, but the reader will find that out at the end of the book.
That's huge. So I'm excited for that for sure.
Thank you.
Sure.
The third one is a big history buff. The third one I've gotten one chapter done. It's essentially, if you're familiar with the Battle of Masada, the Roman army was used in a counterinsurgency in Judea, and there was it kind of, I mean, you could get as detailed as you want, but the book I'm writing will be a novel from the point of a centurion's. Essentially, he's told to go in and put down this rebellion. The rebellion historically started with the levying of taxes. There was, I'm drawing a blank. Herod, I think, was the Jewish king, and then Caesar. I can't remember who the Roman emperor. I'm you got me on the spot.
You got me beat.
But essentially, it's the point of a counterinsurgency. And kind of the emotions that you deal with as a soldier when you don't believe 100% in the mission, but you have to accomplish the mission in some way, shape, or form. And if you know the story of Masada, the insurgents, were they called Israelite? There was a name.
Israelites?
Yeah, there was a name for them. Say Sakari. I think it's Sakari, but they were a Jewish sect. But they were considered, they had problems with not the church. They had problems with the temple, kind of, sort of. It was confusing. There was a lot of politics involved, but essentially they made their way to Masada. And as the Roman legion attempted to lay siege to them, eventually they did lay siege to the Masada. It got in there, and what they found was everyone had killed themselves. But it's like I said, it's going to be a novel, but it'll be told from the point of view of the Roman centurion. Like I said, the difficulties of being a soldier and being given a mission that you may or may not, believe in. There's Jim. There's Jim right there.
Welcome, Jim. We had to throw that up there for Kirk so he could see that you were there. Welcome.
Much. And by the way,
hit that subscribe button. By the way,
that's right. Thank you to men like Jim who served our country for many years. Jim flew attack and fighters in the Navy, was a retired naval aviator. And him and many people like him served during a time without much fanfare and did combat missions against enemies that we see popping up now that we saw before. They didn't get a lot of credit for what they did, a lot of the missions they flew. But I want to say thank you to Jim and people like him. But my third book will be, like I said, kind of it'll be a novel, like I said, told from the point of the Roman centurion conducting a counterinsurgency in the Middle East, which I think would resonate with people who are veterans of the GWAT, because that's what we did. There are a lot of things we were told to do that didn't always agree with, or we thought maybe there's a better way, but at some point, you kind of have to follow orders.
Right.
And the difficulties of that you live with later. So I think that would resonate with those. And then my fourth will be a book series about a character and I don't want to give away too much because I
No,
don't want
no,
anybody to
don't.
steal my idea.
Right.
But,
Don't do it. Don't do
okay.
it. Just say you're going to have enough. You'll,
Yeah,
you've got four
let's just
total books in
yeah
the works.
yeah let's just say there's a character who is involved in all of the conspiracies of the 20th century, and we will find out about him. And he has a special operations background, and that's how he was able to accomplish so many things. So
Awesome. Awesome. I'm assuming you know what that means.
yeah, like
Okay, good.
perhaps General Patton was not an accident. Perhaps Lee Harvey Oswald did not act. So let's just say
Right.
there's a central character that I'm going to create who was involved in all that.
So, for everybody out there in the chats, go ahead now and put out any questions or comments for Kirk, and we will go. I'm going to go out to the chats, and I know I've highlighted some stuff for myself to go back to. So I know we talked about Travis Haley. You answered that question, and then okay, so one of the things, so yeah, you're actually, I'm assuming, fairly close actually to us. So they've been having a little family meeting in the chat that we need to meet up, and so we can all get together. And go to lunch or dinner or what have you. So
Absolutely.
we'll have to put that on your calendar.
Absolutely.
Let's see what else we got. And Jason says to please thank your wife for us as well, that her support of you is heroic as well, which absolutely is correct.
You can't do any of this stuff without backing from home, and Brooke has stood with me through some very difficult times. Like I said, the families suffer and they serve as well, and they don't get the credit they deserve.
Right, agreed. But it's one of those, as family members, we expect that's going to happen, and I guess in our eyes, we're not doing making the tough choices and such, and going through the turmoil that you guys go through.
You guys are.
But Jim says you were talking about being a pilot. Do you know or have you come across Rich Palmersheim?
I have not. Like I said, I flew Blackhawks and Apaches in the Army Guard. I flew EMS helicopters, and now I'm flying business jets, hoping to make the switch to the major airlines, Delta being my where I want to go. I haven't met him.
He said that Rich has been a captain for a while and flies the Airbus.
Okay, I did my ATP CTP training with my friend Jim, actually, in an Airbus 220. And if I get hired by Delta, my first choice is either the Airbus 320, 321. There's one called a Neo, or a 737. I do like the Airbus for a lot of reasons, but as long as I get Atlanta based, I guess I can't really be. Beggars can't be choosers. I want to be based in Atlanta because that's where I live. But I want one of the Airbuses, but I'll certainly take the 737.
Right. He does that, of course, and yes, pilots are definitely in demand, and best wishes to you on that. Kelly, and of course, as I said, the family's talking backstage or, in the chat there. Yep. So wants to know if we're going to hang out sometime.
Shoot, yeah. Absolutely.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Let's see. And he wanted to know if you've been reading his diary. Because the mindset, 2 Marines. Yeah, that's kind of how it
goes. So. That's a good plan, though. When I tell people, man, there's a lot of therapy involved in writing, at least for me, and I think that's pretty common. Some of the greatest literature in our history comes from people, who, for lack of a better word, have, a PTSD, if you want to call it PTSD, or just have combat experiences. And I forget the guy's name. The guy that wrote Winnie the Pooh had experienced great trauma in the trenches in World War I, and he was looking for an escape, and he found it with writing. Rudyard Kipling obviously saw a great deal of combat action. He was an adventurer. He was not in the military, but I believe his parents were diplomats, if I got that correct. But Rudyard Kipling has a great deal of combat experience, and then just that experience, allowed him to be such a great writer, in my opinion. In recent years, people like Sebastian Junger, the journalist, but he was, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he kind of comes across as addicted to combat, perhaps, or he understands the addiction to that lifestyle, and he himself has it. He has, and again, these are his words, not mine, but he he keeps in touch with everyone that he went and lived with people in combat in Iraq and Afghanistan, and he still keeps in touch with them, and he feels like a greater bond with them than he does with his peers, his journalist coworkers. So there's something to be said for writing and being able to get it off your chest. And like I said, my buddy Jim, he does a lot of writing as well, and it's just I find it therapeutic, and it's like I said, some of the greatest writers in our history have had some level of combat experience and whatnot.
Yeah, I think that's huge, just to get it out, get it into the ethers, as my grandmother used to say. And yeah, Jim does say you had to have an amazing story.
Thank you very much.
And again, Killian, quit reading his diary. Jason says, thank you for your service. Also, thank your wife and kids for their service and supporting you.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Sergeant, of course, is the backbone of the Marine Corps.
Right. That's right. I'm going to say Lance Corporals. They're the they're the movers and the shakers. They're the backbone, or they're the leg muscles. They're the back muscles. How about that?
There you go.
Sergeants are the backbone,
they're the
but
cap.
Lance Corporals are the back muscle. I think we'll go with that.
Let's see. What else do we have? Oh, okay. So actually, he said that Rich Palmersheim was from Montana.
Okay.
All right. I missed that one. So what is this? You flew a 320 takeoff to landing, Atlanta to where is that?
That's in Tennessee. That's McGee Tyson. That's Knoxville. I'm sorry. That's.
Okay.
Yeah, so we flew in the simulator. He's being very gracious, man. He's got, I don't know, I think he stopped counting his flight time at like 15,000 hours.
Oh wow.
He's being very gracious, but he's one of my best friends, and just a great person. Like I said, his resume would humble you, but he's being very gracious.
So it sounds like this Jim, to the other Jim, to JCL out there, he does not know Rich Palmersheim either. So let's see. And Jim also says, thank you for your story. What a story of life. The books have to be amazing. Well done. Amazing on your saving of lives, commitment, dedication, perseverance, and heart.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It wasn't just me. I mean, it's a team effort, man. It, whatever mission or job, if you're a special operator, there's somebody putting your weapons together and making sure the ammo is there and the food and the vehicles are taken care of. If you're an aviator, there's people out there wrenching on the Black Hawk or the Apache or the Little Bird when you're sleeping or when you're eating or something like that. It's a team effort, man. It's a monumental effort, and those people don't get the credit they deserve.
Right. And that's one of the things that, I have had, I don't know how many, I know you've watched several episodes of this channel, and thank you so much for that. We got to keep those views up.
Oh, great.
But where was I going with it? Squirrel.
The squirrel. Wow. I was just talking about the support network, that it takes to get these things going.
And several of my guests have had those support roles. And every single role, no matter how small or that they feel it is, non-combat, whatever the case may be, whether it's in, communications or distilling of water, so they're all very important for the entire, for everybody, not just, our military, but, for the civilians of where they're fighting. Yeah. So it's all very important.
Absolutely.
So Killian, when I told him who I had on, and this was prior to the show, he sent me a snap on Snapchat and wanted me to ask this question. Sure. So Killian, you better be paying attention. Keep an eye on his face. Here we go. So Killian is my son. He is in the market for a Block 2 kit.
A Glock 2 or Block 2?
Block. A Block 2 kit. He said you would know what this is. He said.
I'm drawing.
Yeah, see, I got nothing. I don't know what that is. So you'll have to explain that to me.
Yeah. I'm going to have give me a hint.
Right? He might be driving too, so it might be a little.
Okay. Yeah. Don't drive and text. I've got a ticket for that, which I have to disclose on my application to the airline.
Yeah. Whoops. That's not good. Don't do that. I know. See, yeah. It's really interesting. His drive. He drives generally once a weekend. So, and yeah. Anyway, any other questions out there for Kirk? Oh, it's for the most updated M4 mods.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm familiar with that terminology. If it's a military, because you have a lot of the civilian manufacturers that make and maybe it's wrong, but I just always say M4, meaning that weapon system, that type of that caliber, 223 calibers or something like that. So yeah, he got me on. So he got me on that one. But gunbroker.com is a pretty good place to go to. So
what was that again?
Gunbroker.com.
Oh, there you go.
So
that's funny. So sorry, Killian. You're kind of on your own with that one. I'm not seeing any other questions out there. And I definitely, again, want to thank you very much for your service. And I do recognize, it's a team effort. You're the one in front of me at this very moment. And of course, I thank the veterans often. But thank you again, specifically to you at this moment for your sacrifice and your service and your continued service as well. And hopefully we'll keep in touch after this.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, because I know I've got a family who wants to come and say hello. So we'll have to do that. I mean, you bring your wife along. We'll do lunch or dinner or something out there. So, okay. So, all right, everybody. I'm going to get some music going. And Kirk, if you want to just hang out for just a minute.
Sure, absolutely.
Everybody, y'all, thanks so much for hanging in there with us. And please be sure to like, share this with people, make a comment when this is over, and send it to people. Subscribe. We are so close to 100 subscribers. I cannot wait. I have been hanging on to stuff to give away. So let's do this. We want to hit that 100 mark. So all right, everybody. Thank you so much. And again, Kirk, thank you.
Thank you for bringing our stories forward. Thank you so much.
I am so happy to do it. It means a lot to me. So hang tight, and we're going to get some music going. All right. There we go. All right, everybody. Thanks, Christine, Jason, Killian, Jim, and Jim. Appreciate you guys. And let's see. Thank you for coming out tonight. appreciate that. We had Joe McHugh. We had Ron Wayne. Gosh, we had a lot. We had a lot of conversations going on out there. Amazing. G23, thank you. Appreciate you joining the conversation. Let's see. We got Roy. Again, I am excited to talk to you, Roy. So if you can hear this, I will be getting in touch with you somehow. Or you can get in touch with me. Again, Ron Wayne, thank you. Tennessee Goddess, you, my sister from another mister. Good to see you out there. Thank you for joining. Christine, I appreciate you being here. Also on time, as you said. Thank you. Let's see. All right. Thank you. We will see you guys next week. Again, 6 o'clock Central Time. That'll be on Sunday. So looking forward to having everybody out there then. Y'all have a good night.